On the last season of the Best Team Football League, or BTFL Season 2, we got together every great player from the 91 to 94 seasons, created different teams and different conferences and divisions from cities all across the United States. We also did a fantasy draft based on a tier system to stock up all these teams. Some were extremely great and some had Cody Carlson at quarterback. I don't know how that happened. Regardless, in the Bobcat Conference, we have the Portland Snowhawks, led by the great quarterback play of Hall of Famer Troy Aikman, and one of the leading receivers in the league being Ernest Givens. Then the Warthog Conference, we had the Buffalo Stampede with one of the best defenses in the league and probably the best fullback in the league in Bo Jackson. This Buffalo team started out the season 1-5 and found a way to scrape into the playoffs. When the dust settles, we had probably one of the dumbest championship games of all time, where the Snowhawks had a 7-point lead with less than a minute left when Troy Aikman threw a boneheaded pick, leading to a Buffalo score to go to overtime. Then Portland tried an onside kick, recovered by Buffalo. Then Buffalo missed the field goal on the next play, and after Portland punted the ball back to Buffalo, they never got the ball back after Pete Stoyanovich kicked the game-winning field goal, winning the city of Buffalo their first championship. This year is going to be a little different, more like Season 1. We will go back to the 32-team format, with many of your favorites on every team. This season will contain every team's best player in the history of their franchise, according to me. Each team will also contain the best coach that they've ever had, but no duplicates. For instance, head coach of the Cardinals is Don Coryell, even though he also coached the Chargers very well. Same with Andy Reid. He will be the head coach of the Chiefs, despite also being the head coach of the Eagles. On the other hand, there are duplicate players. Terrell Owens played for the 49ers and Eagles. He will be on both teams. Matthew Stafford played for the Rams and Lions. He is also on both teams. You can thank the Lions for not getting to the Super Bowl because he would have gotten swapped out for Jared Goff, but he barely missed the cut. All of this using a ROM created by Goji, using the 2019 season schedule and modified by Rick 8-Bit and myself. Here is the introduction to the BTFL, or Best Team Football League Season 3, with the rosters of all of the players, including a notification of whether or not they made it into the Hall of Fame. Also, thank you to everyone who helped me formulate these rosters. I know I couldn't have possibly gotten everyone, but I feel like most of these players deserve to be here. Season come and go. Some players have one good year and then fall off, but I don't think that's the case here. Well, you know what to do. Play the music! Starting out with the all-time great Arizona Cardinals, being led by head coach Don Coryell. They'll have Hall of Famers in Kurt Warner, Edgerrin James, Jackie Smith, Dan Dierdorf, Aeneas Williams, and Roger Worley. And now to the real Dirty Birds, led by head coach Dan Quinn. They will have Hall of Famers in Tony Gonzalez at tight end, and Deion Sanders will be the Hall of Famer at cornerback. Baltimore Ravens, led by John Harbaugh, have Hall of Famers in Shannon Sharpe at tight end, Rod Woodson, as well as Ray Lewis at linebacker. No one circles the wagon, much like these Buffalo Bills with their head coach Marv Levy, who was their head coach for 4 Super Bowls in the 90s. They've got Jim Kelly at quarterback, Thurman Thomas, O.J. Simpson at running back, Andre Reed and James Lofton are also Hall of Famers, as well as Bruce Smith at defensive end. These Chicago Bears are led by the only head coach that will be coaching himself, Mike Ditka, Hall of Fame tight end with Walter Payton and Gale Sayers at running back, Richard Dent at defensive end, Dick Butkus at outside linebacker, Mike Singletary inside linebacker, as well as Brian Urlacher at linebacker. The Carolina Panthers, led by Riverboat Ron, they only have one Hall of Famer, Sam Mills, but they've also got Julius Peppers and Luke Kuechly, who could be future Hall of Famers. As voted on by Twitter, the all-time great Cincinnati Bengals have their head coach as Sam Weish, and the only Hall of Famer they have on this screen is Anthony Munoz. But they've also got some great players on the team, so watch out for them. Paul Brown is the head coach of the Cleveland Browns, and yes, Baker Mayfield is going to be a quarterback on this team. I could not get the statistics for Otto Graham. Paul Warfield and Jim Brown are Hall of Famers on offense with Ozzie Newsome and Joe Thomas. And Len Ford is the lone defensive Hall of Famer. All-time great Dallas Cowboys led by Tom Landry, head coach of the Dallas Cowboys in the 70s when they had a lot of success. Roger Staubach will be their Hall of Fame quarterback. I did not add Troy Aikman because I was told that Dak Prescott was better. Tony Dorsett, Michael Irvin, Drew Pearson at the skill positions, and Larry Allen being an offensive lineman Hall of Famer. Bob Lilly, Randy White, DeMarcus Ware, Charles Haley, Deion Sanders, Mel Renfro, and Chris Harris are Hall of Famers on defense for the Dallas Cowboys. These Denver Broncos, all-time, Mike Shanahan is the head coach who won Super Bowls for the Denver Broncos in the late 90s, with John Elway being the quarterback. His backup will be Peyton Manning, who is also a Hall of Famer. Terrell Davis and Floyd Little were both Hall of Famers as well. And Shannon Sharpe was too, even though he's not labeled here. He should be. Gary Zimmerman is an offensive lineman who is a Hall of Famer. On defense, we have Champ Bailey and Steve Atwater, who were Hall of Famers for the Denver Broncos. George Wilson will lead these all-time Detroit Lions, who were great. Before the end of the NFC Championship game between the Lions and the 49ers, I was thinking about replacing Matthew Stafford with Jared Goff, who would have been an all-time great Lion had he made it to the Super Bowl with the Lions, but that did not happen. Bobby Lane, Hall of Fame quarterback. Barry Sanders, Hall of Fame running back. Calvin Johnson, Megatron, Hall of Fame wide receiver. Charlie Sanders, Hall of Fame tight end. And to round it out for the defense, Dick LeBeau being a Hall of Famer at cornerback, and Dick Lane also being a Hall of Famer at cornerback. It seems like the all-time great Green Bay Packers have a lot of Hall of Famers here. Vince Lombardi is their head coach. Aaron Rodgers and Brett Favre, Aaron Rodgers will be a Hall of Famer, are the quarterbacks. Paul Hornung will be the running back who is a Hall of Famer. James Lofton and Don Hudson were wide receivers who were great for the Packers. Charlie Sanders at tight end. Jerry Kramer and Mike Michalski will be the offensive linemen. Reggie White, the Minister of Defense. Henry Jordan will be the nose tackle, and Willie Davis on the line. Dave Robinson at linebacker, as well as Ray Nitschke. And then finally, Charles Woodson and Herb Adderley at the cornerback position, and then Leroy Butler, the safety for the Packers. These all-time great Indianapolis Colts / Baltimore Colts are led by Peyton Manning, the Hall of Famer, as well as Johnny Unitas, Eric Dickerson, Marshall Faulk, and Edgerrin James with a Hall of Fame running back core. Marvin Harrison, the Hall of Famer, as well as Raymond Berry. And then Gino Marchetti at nose tackle will round off the Colts as the Hall of Famers on the team. And I think Tony Dungy is also a Hall of Famer, if I'm not mistaken. Not much to write home about these all-time great Jacksonville Jaguars. They still are a fairly new team. They have one Hall of Famer in Tony Boselli. The Jacksonville Jaguars will have Tom Coughlin at head coach because the New York Giants will have a different head coach. So I believe that the Jacksonville Jaguars are in very good hands with Tom Coughlin. All-time great Houston Texans, they do not have any Hall of Famers on their team, and that's because they are a fairly new franchise. Gary Kubiak is their most successful head coach to date, but they do have some really good players like DeMeco Ryans, who's Defensive Player of the Year, who is the Rookie of the Year. J.J. Watt is in the Ring of Honor, as well as Andre Johnson is also in the Ring of Honor. Those two players should be in the Hall of Fame by the time my life ends. The all-time great Kansas City Chiefs will be coached by Andy Reid. I know he was once an Eagles head coach, but he had more success with the Kansas City Chiefs. Len Dawson is a Hall of Famer at quarterback, Tony Gonzalez at tight end, Buck Buchanan at nose tackle, Bobby Bell and Derek Thomas, as well as Willie Lanier at the linebacker position, Emmett Thomas and Johnny Robinson at the defensive back position. It's going to get loud here at Arrowhead. Sid Gilman will coach the all-time great LA / San Diego Chargers, LaDainian Tomlinson, Hall of Fame running back. Lance Allworth and Charlie Joyner, Hall of Fame wide receivers, as well as Kellen Winslow, who is also a Hall of Fame tight end. And then finally, to round out the team, Junior Seau, Hall of Fame outside linebacker. The all-time great St. Louis/LA Rams will be headed by Dick Vermeil. I know Sean McVay was also a really good head coach. But Kurt Warner will be the Hall of Fame quarterback. He will be the starter. Marshall Faulk and Eric Dickerson, the running backs. Isaac Bruce, wide receiver. Orlando Pace and Tom Mack, Hall of Fame offensive linemen. Deacon Jones, as well as Merlin Olsen at the defensive line. Jack Youngblood and Kevin Green at the linebacker position. And then Aeneas Williams at the cornerback position. The all-time great Minnesota Vikings will be led by Bud Grant, who was the head coach of the Vikings when they went on their Super Bowl runs from 1969 all the way to 1980. Fran Tarkenton is the Hall of Fame quarterback for the Minnesota Vikings. Randy Moss and Chris Carter are both Hall of Fame receivers. Randall McDaniel, Hall of Fame offensive lineman. John Randall, Alan Page, Carl Eller, defensive linemen who are in the Hall of Fame. Paul Krause, Hall of Fame safety/inside linebacker. And Chris Dolman is a Hall of Fame outside linebacker for the Minnesota Vikings. Don Shula is the head coach of the Miami Dolphins all-time great team. He was the head coach when they went perfect back in 1972. Dan Marino and Bob Greasy, two Hall of Fame quarterbacks. Mercury Morris and Larry Zonka are the running backs. Larry Zonka is a Hall of Fame fullback. Paul Warfield at receiver. Dwight Stevenson at center. Zach Thomas at linebacker. And Nick Bonaconti at inside linebacker as well. These New England Patriots will be led by none other than Bill Belichick, the best head coach in their history. Curtis Martin, Hall of Fame running back. Randy Moss, Hall of Fame wide receiver. John Hanna, Hall of Fame right guard. Richard Seymour, Hall of Fame defensive end. And Andre Tippett, Hall of Fame outside linebacker. But there's more to come with this team, I'm sure. Sean Payton is the most highly decorated head coach in the history of the New Orleans Saints. They do not have very many Hall of Famers. They only have Ricky Jackson and I believe Sam Mills as well. But that's only because the New Orleans Saints were really bad from the time they started pretty much all the way till 2006. So they don't have as much history there, but I know that they'll have more Hall of Famers. These are the all-time great New York Giants. The G-Men are headed by Bill Parcells. And they've got Hall of Famers in Michael Strahan at defensive end and Harry Carson and Lawrence Taylor at outside linebacker. Look for this Giants team to make a splash. All-time great New York Jets are led by Weave Eubanks. They have Joe Namath and... Okay, why is Aaron Rodgers there? Well, I guess it's because even Aaron Rodgers, who had a bad leg, could probably perform better than almost every other New York Jets quarterback not named Joe Namath. Curtis Martin is a Hall of Fame running back. Kevin Mawai is a Hall of Fame center. And not marked here is Don Maynard, who is a Hall of Fame wide receiver. Joe Klecko is also a Hall of Fame nose tackle, as well as Darrelle Revis, who's standing there on Revis Island. All-time great Las Vegas, LA/Oakland Raiders are led by legendary coach John Madden. He's got Ken Stabler, Marcus Allen, Tim Brown, Jerry Rice, Fred Biletnikoff, Cliff Branch. At tight end, he's got Dave Casper. Offensive line, he's got Gene Upshaw. Defense, he's got Howie Long, Charles Woodson, and Willie Brown. The all-time great Philadelphia Eagles are led by the only coach to ever win them a Super Bowl, Doug Peterson. They've got Norm Van Brocklin at quarterback, Steve Van Buren, Hall of Fame running back, Terrell Owens and Harold Carmichael are Hall of Fame wide receivers. Reggie White, the Minister of Defense, is the defensive end who's at Hall of Fame, as well as Chuck Bednarik at inside linebacker and Brian Dawkins at safety. The all-time great Pittsburgh Steelers have a heck of a lot of Hall of Famers, with Chuck Noll as their head coach, Terry Bradshaw at quarterback, Jerome Bettis and Franco Harris at running back, Lynn Swann and John Stallworth at wide receiver, Mike Webster and Alan Faneca at offensive line, Mean Joe Green at nose tackle, as well as Jack Lambert and Jack Ham at linebacker. Rod Woodson, Mel Blount, and Troy Polamalu are at the defensive back position. The all-time great San Francisco 49ers have a lot of Hall of Famers of their own. Bill Walsh at head coach, Joe Montana and Steve Young, Hall of Fame quarterbacks. Jerry Rice and Terrell Owens are Hall of Fame wide receivers. They also have Bryant Young at defensive end, Ronnie Lott at inside linebacker / safety, Charles Haley at outside linebacker, Deion Sanders at cornerback, and that rounds out the team. Pete Carroll will lead the all-time great Seattle Seahawks with Steve Largent and Steve Hutchinson on the offense, as well as Cortez Kennedy, the nose tackle for the Seattle Seahawks. John Gruden was chosen to be the head coach of the all-time great Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They have Hall of Famers in Warren Sapp, Derek Brooks, and Rondé Barber, with more to come, I'm sure. All-time great Tennessee Titans / Houston Oilers have the head coach being Jeff Fisher. He has Hall of Famers in Warren Moon at quarterback, Earl Campbell at running back, Bruce Matthews and Mike Munchak at offensive line, and that's it. And finally, Washington Redskins / football team / Commanders will be led by Joe Gibbs. He's got Hall of Famers in Sammy Baugh and Sonny Jurgensen. He's got Hall of Famers in John Riggins at running back, Art Monk at wide receiver, Russ Grimm at left guard, and in the defensive backfield, he's got Hall of Famers in Darrell Green, Champ Bailey, and Ken Houston. Thank you all for watching the intro video for the BTFL Season 3. I'll be releasing individual episodes for each week of the BTFL Season 3 when I can, along with weekly statistics, injury reports, Thursday night full primetime games, as well as weekly social media reports about the players. I hope you guys are able to watch them and view them. I hope you all have a nice day.